Hello everybody, my name is Julia Borodina. I'm an artist living in West Yorkshire, originally from Western Siberia in Russia, and today as part of the ArtWaves festival I would like to do a demonstration for you. The work is going to be created in acrylics, and the theme I have chosen is the Filey beach, where I love going walking when the weather is lovely or it's very stormy. It's always inspirational for me. And my underlining topic for the demonstration is how to make the color of your background to create a fantastic and exciting atmosphere for your painting. So for us, I have chosen an orange background, which I have already primed my board with, and I'd like you to watch my process developing my painting. Enjoy. So stage one of the painting is to prime the board, the canvas you're painting on. I have chosen the orange to complement some of the warm colors on my beach scene, some lovely rocks, and offset the colors against the orange background, leaving some of the small maybe gaps of orange, and see how that color will be shining through our details. So step number 2 is drawing. Now I'll try to have a similar color paper or board next to my work, so I can test my colors at any time, and I can sample different color combinations. Just gonna move a little bit closer. So I tend to sketch with a narrow round brush. I'm going to use some of my colors here. I'm going to have some ochre, a little bit of white, and some violet. Just going to make this color a little bit diluted. Some more violet here. And that's runny paint is going to be perfect for sketching my composition on the canvas or the board in my case. Right, so I'm back in the position here. I'm going to decide on the line of horizon for my image. So I think I'm going to have quite a small amount of sky left. I'm going to not deliberately copy exactly the layout of the image on the photograph, but I'm going to bring the best details from it, the best elements from it. So the cliffs are going to start somewhere here, and that will be a higher cliff, which is probably going to take me maybe not quite to the center of the painting. And then I'm going to have some small amount of water. The wave's going to come through here. At this stage, this is really good to use a paper towel or some cloth if you wanted to wipe anything off and change your mind for the composition. So I think I'm going to make it a little bit higher as I'm developing my work here. So lift it up. And that's very important not to be scared if you've done something and you change your mind, you think it will benefit your work to change something. At this stage, that's a perfect timing. Now I have got a lot of rocks here, and they're all in different placements. Yeah, they're all, some of them closer, some of them further, some of them big gaps in between them. So I would like to use maybe this large rock as maybe my key element, as a big shape. You're in charge of your painting, so you can decide how many rocks you want to involve, where you'd like to put them, rather than just copying them exactly how they are in the picture. You're the artist. You're the one who got inspired by the scenery, and you're the one who's trying to create it and reproduce it to remind yourself of those memories of being there. Maybe inspire others to go and visit the place as well. Remind them of their time there, right? So my foreground is developing quite nicely here. I think I'm going to have a line of rocks coming across this side. So I need to make sure that the size of the cliffs is not overpowering, or is not the same in volume as maybe some of these rocks. Okay, so I'm just going to deliberately make them smaller here, slightly smaller. And there are loads of details going on the back. I think I'm going to reduce them to just a rough silhouette of the rocks there. I really like this very dark seaweed, so maybe that will be a lovely element to bring here, and how it might be coming across further into the painting. I'm also very excited to see a puddle, a little collection of water right here. Again, I'm going to move it a little bit across because it's a beautiful blue color, which I think I would like to have somewhere here. So then I can bring my rock close to it. So I'm trying to create a visual movement for our eye traveling through the composition. So maybe another rock leading and keeping the viewer's eyes somewhere here central, maybe focusing on this spot of blue across. Okay, these elements look a little bit similar, so I think I'm going to increase the size of this rock, maybe give it a little bit more curvature on the bottom. There's some nice darker shadows coming across here. Maybe it's a seaweed here as well. And I think I'm going to extend this rock slightly forward here as well. So that will work, I think, best. The rest of the elements, I will probably bring some of the other rocks close behind. I just need to make sure that they don't clash in size or shape. We tend to clone shapes, and as long as we spot it and change it, we are doing really well, or at least we spot it at the time before we finish our painting. So this is going to be the overall layout for my piece, and I'm ready to get started with my color. I tend to start painting with the sky, so I'm just mixing some phthalo blue and white, and this is quite a good color. I can make it slightly lighter, and I can make it slightly darker towards the top of the painting, as the sky usually is darker right in the middle of the sky and it gets lighter towards the horizon. I'm just going to adjust my clip here, and I'm going to paint all of that area in my pale blue. Now, my initial layers of paint are usually quite thin, doesn't have much relief in them. So if I need to work on top, the previous layers do not interrupt the brush strokes. That's quite a strong blue. I'm just going to tone it down, merge those colors together. Also, having thinner layers as a starting point allows me to see some of my background I have created. So the blue is just a little bit in places, allows that orange to be viewed. I'm going to add slightly more white here, just using a flat brush, synthetic brush. There's a little bit of haze on the horizon, so I'm going to add to this blue and white a hint of violet. Again, I can test it out how it might look, making sure that I'm mixing the paint really well. There's no marbling effect, so the paint is evenly separated, mixed and not separated within my bristles. I'm just going to add a hint more violet here, and around this little haze I'm going to add a lighter color, a lighter pale blue. I'm trying to have my stroke slightly under the angle. There's quite a nice hint of orange left. I think I'm going to leave that little dot there. So my strokes are slightly under the angle to create that movement within the sky. Okay, I'm quite happy with that. And while I have a similar blue, I'm going to add it to the water here. I think a little bit more white will be better, and a tiny bit more. The flat brush is perfect to make some straight lines, and that gives me an advantage point, as I don't need to think about how accurately I should be painting. It's already, the flat brush is doing it for me. I'm going to add more blue, just checking it how it's going to go against here. There is a depth to the sea here, and maybe it's created by the light under the crashing waves. So I'm just going to have it a little bit darker. And if I'll add a hint of violet to it again, there are some rocks just protruding from the water. So for now, I'm going to make them as a dark line, combination of violet and blue across. I think I also can put this color for my little water section here. It might look a little bit dark for the moment, but I'll see how it develops. Maybe another one. I fancy another one for now. Just gives it a a really good movement within the work. From time to time, I'll be wiping my brush. So it's good practice to keep the brush not overloaded with the paint. And I'm going to top up some lighter color. I think it's settling darker than I intended above my purple haze. So I'm just going to, while the paint is reasonably wet here, I can merge it gently with the colors. And above my waterline, there's some crashing waves and some lovely fresh whites. I can just gently introduce a few strokes. I might need to top them up later on, but for now, I'll leave them as they are, just a little bit broken. They're there, but they're not taking too much attention. Right, so I'm going to change now the color of my brush. So this brush will need to be or washed or swapped. Now I'm going to choose the color for my light white rocks. So I'm mixing white and ochre, and I'm going to cover them quite boldly. As initial big color, leaving a little bit of orange here and there around them. This one has a lot of light on this section. And some more, maybe a small amount here because it will be in a shadow. Maybe a little edge. Again, one side of this rock. Topping up some paint. I'm not using too much water now, only if I need to make the paint mix smoothly. Otherwise, I don't really need much paint there. I'm going to make this rock light as well. And these ones, just working on them quite quickly. This rock is going to have a little bit of light on the top, otherwise it's going to be covered in seaweed. However, we have some lighter rocks behind, and I'm going to work again as a group of shapes of rocks on them. This one is protruding a little bit higher than the rest. And I'm going to now start mixing some seaweed green color. So I'm using one of my blues, Palo Blue, with some ochre. To give me an idea what that color is going to be, maybe a little bit darker. So some more blue. Just a little bit better mixing. So it looks quite a light green, so I can still add some blue or even a small amount of violet. That's an exciting color. I'll try to follow the shape, how the seaweed is going over this rock, how it's been flowing with the water. Okay, maybe a little bit of texture building up, just a little bit of dry brushing marks. And it's all quite dark here at the bottom. Same as this one, could stay quite dark green. Small amounts of it on this side. There are loads of variations of color on these rocks, but I'm going to simplify it for now. Once most of the green is established, I keep adding small amounts of violet to this green. When the overall green is established, I'm going to do some shadows. So adding more violet and blue to this green. And I can now work into some of the shadows. Small strokes. Now, so this color is not gonna look too on its own. I'm going to bring it a little bit across, possibly looking at some of the shadows around the rocks, creating extra details, small marks, maybe small exaggerated texture. Maybe some of the seaweed is going across here, how it's been flowing with the water and just settled in on this rock. So my color is doesn't feel like it's on its own. So some of that blue is traveling across the painting. Some nice darker shadows. Even some of that seaweed here as well. Might be quite nice to have in that cooler color painted across. It's quite a nice shadow. I think I'm going to paint it all in this color. So at this stage, I'm just working into big blocks of color, into big shapes, establishing overall important elements of the painting. Right. I'm coming back now to the cliffs, as they haven't been touched yet, so I'm just using a little pinky color. So I used violet and crimson to have this lovely just enough pink color, and the shadows, I'm going to make them cooler shadows, so I'm going to use some more blue and again establish a silhouette of the cliffs here. There's a nice steps of how the cliffs were formed. This could be a darker shadow, just adding extra darkness to this area. A little bit more violet. And I'm going to have slightly warmer brown for this corner. Looks quite dark. Just going to make sure I'll have some lighter color on the brush. And there's erosion going on, so some small texture will be quite beneficial. Again, I'm going to come back to some of this pink. Just to make it slightly fresh in color. So I'm mixing some fresh pink with a hint of ochre. Some more white will give me a hint of light down the cliff. Maybe some stronger even light color. Establishing some smaller details there as well. So it's a little bit of light protruding across. Maybe just touching slightly here at the top as well. And this color I have on my brush will work, I think, beautifully for some of the shadows on our rocks as well. So it's almost like the shadows are hugging our rocks, our stones. Just a small amount here. That looks much more settled color. I think all of this one need to go on a shadow. Something peeping through the seaweed. I will be making these rocks a little bit lighter, but I think for now they need that coolness. And some here as well. And just making sure that I'm not cloning the same size shapes. Identifying maybe the silhouette around this rock. Looks too bold in its highlights, so I'm just going to settle it slightly in. They look a little calmer now, not as jumping at us. And it's time to change the color again. I'm ready now to paint some highlights on the stones again. Slightly more water on the brush for the water to flow, for the paint to get more smooth edges. It does look like that stone coming out from the sand. And this one's going to have a highlight. Let's see if I can leave some of that orange still. This side of the rock is quite a large area. I'll use some more water. Will give me some transparent layers. Tiny bit lighter, maybe here. Again, I can come back with extra highlights later on, but for now I'm softening some of the yellow highlights. Which they provided me a good base color. So now these rocks just bringing back to life. I tend to say that you have to make a mess within your painting first before you can start tidying things up. You have to start from having all your ingredients out on your kitchen. You can't have a perfect kitchen when you're a creative chef there. Same with the painting. You have to almost have a vision of how it's going to be and allow yourself to go with the flow of colors. So I can slowly see how my colors are coming together. And I'm ready to swap the brush for a smaller one very shortly. Okay, right, let's swap this brush. I'm going to top up some of the bold green sections of the seaweed in small amounts, but I think my work needed to have that fresher color coming through. A little bit of light green. So the darker greens will support the highlights as well. So working in small amounts, maybe on the border lines of shadows. Maybe on some of the tops of the rocks where the light might have been strongest. Right, that might be enough for now. Maybe a little bit more here as well. Just dry brushing over this area so it's not too much coming through. And it's time to touch the sand. So I'm going to have some cooler sand back close to the water. I used some violet, ochre and white. Just settles it in a bit more. I quite like some of this orangey color, but maybe not as bold or not as much in quantities. So I'm just reducing it into smaller amounts. Same with this area. It's going to be present a little bit, but maybe not as strong. Right, some small amount of warmth here. I'm going to add more crimson and ochre to the color I've just been using. Maybe a little bit more crimson. Some small darker area around here. I think I might lose this grey stone and work close to the water. I might reintroduce that stone later on. It's quite a good colour. I might just need to make it slightly lighter by adding more white. And still a tiny bit lighter. White and a hint of ochre. Give it a bit of warmth. That's a nice light now. It's coming through. Just offsets some of our shadows. And a hint of it somewhere here as well. Maybe how the water been running through the sand might have a smoother strips of light. So the painting slowly gaining more unity. In the choice of color for the rocks and the choice of color for the sand. I'm going to bury some of these rocks now in the sand by adding some of this lighter color of the sand, or adding some of this sand to the rocks. I still quite like some small amounts of orange present. Just trying to be accurate, not to cover them all. Okay, that's looking good. It's also important to step away from your painting to see what's happening to it. I'm working reasonably close up to it. So I need that moment of reflection of any amendments needed to be done at this stage. I think I'm ready to add some darker tones to the sand now as well. Some smaller nuances. Smaller shadows, definitions, a little bit of sharpening. A little bit of emphasis on certain details more than others. Placement of small dots, almost like full stops. In Chinese brush painting, they're called these little dots and full stops. They're called happy dots. Just small points of tension, possible development of points of interest. So I'm slowly sharpening the details. Trying to do it steady and not to overwork it. At the same time, give myself some freedom. If I do make a mistake, it's okay. I can come back and maybe work into that area again when it dries. Or if I decided it needs changing more or less immediately, I can wipe it off. There's some dark rocks coming out, seaweed coming out from the water. That's quite nice. And then some sharpening around this area. Sometimes with nuances, we have to go with the flow. we have to, just by small amount of paint, adding, just go with your gut feel how much and where it's needed to be added. Now I need to be careful now, so I'm not going to overwork these dark shapes. On the other hand, the painting gained some sharpness to it. A little bit of dry brushing to show some of the seaweed going on this area. Maybe a little lighter. I think I'm going to cover that section with some paler color rather than leaving it too light. A little bit more definition on this middle ground. Let's work around this pond of water, getting some wet sand around it. Creating that space where the water can settle or have settled. Now I've extended it into another little pond, a little bit of water, so I might bring that blue color a little higher. Okay, maybe a shadow here as well. So the orange is definitely still protruding within the painting. And it still gives a nice feel of warmth. Now I think now the cliffs need a little more definition, maybe in the shadows areas. So I'm going to come back to them with some sharper shadows. Changing the contrast to more bold ones. But without the paler colors at the back, I wouldn't have been able to reach that effect. It's gone a little bit too dark for that highlight. So I'll bring it back by introducing a lighter color on top again. It's a little too strong in light. Still a little bit too much. And then I can again frame it with a darker color I used, just to give that silhouette a little bit more natural shape. Have some mid-tones in between. I like that bit of orange here. A very small amount. Just right in that place. Coming close to the cliffs. A little more darkness. And I could be playing with this for a little bit longer, or could be working with further nuances. I think at this stage I'm going to shortly stop and evaluate the work as it dries, and instead of referring to the photograph, work with the painting with its own elements and its own colors. There's a little bit of light, I think, will work better. the sand is settling in, swirling around some of the areas. Just having that feel for the painting, having the feel for the elements you develop. Still drawing a little bit darker, so if I'll add some extra highlights to show that distance. With the distance we have our sand slightly lighter than close to us. Again, some more highlights at the back, some of the rocks. Just making sure they're not too similar in shapes or in edges. I think I'm going to turn this one to a rock. The puddle might have a tiny bit of a highlighted edge. And as I said, I could be playing with this for a little bit longer, but I'm going to stop and evaluate my work over maybe the next day or so before I can come back to it and decide if it is finished or if it needs some more details worked on. It could be another little edge. Paint it there. As well. Right, I'm going to stop at this and look back, and if there will be any other amendments, touch it up at the later stage. Thank you very much for watching the demonstration. I hope you've learned something today and used some of the orange background influence and creating a whole atmosphere for a beachy scene. Thank you very much, and I hope to see you in one of my workshops during the ArtWaves festival. Thank you.